Hi everyone, my name is Leah Kopke and I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. I also have a podcast where each week I cover another 3D modeling tool for Cinema 4D. Hello and welcome! Today we're going to be going over another 3D modeling tool called Set Point Value. This tool works on polygon points, spline points, and even FFD points. So it's a lot of fun to work with this tool, and I'll go through all the settings for it so that you know what they are. Let's go ahead and jump into Cinema 4D and get started. So here we are inside of Cinema 4D. A place that I just like to start off with is showing where this tool is. So you can find this tool under our mesh menu. And you'll actually notice that a lot of these tools we've already covered in previous episodes. We've covered almost everything within the add category. The only one we have left to really go over here is weight subdivision surface. We've covered all of these within the remove. We've covered all the tools within the clone menu. We've covered all the tools within the cut menu. We've covered almost all the tools in here within the move menu. You'll see the one we're going over today is right here, set point value, and the hotkey for it is MU. So that is important to remember. The hotkey is MU, and I'll keep saying MU several times so that hopefully you'll remember the hotkey for this is MU, and we'll probably say it some more later. But this gives you an idea of where this tool is. We've covered the Ngon tools, the tools for your normals, and eventually, after we cover these ones up here, we'll get into sculpting, which will be tons of fun. So anyways, let's talk about this tool and talk about how it works. Well, first of all, it works best if you're in point mode. I'm going to add in a plane here, and I'm going to turn on my lines because we're going to be talking about what's happening with these points. So just right off the bat, if you were to use this tool, and remember the hotkey for it is MU, and now that we've selected that, you can see set point value is here. The problem is this is all grayed out because we're in object mode, or sorry, we are in model mode, not object mode. We are in model mode. So we need to go over to our points and turn on our points over here. And now you'll see this is still grayed out. So why is that? Well, our plane is not editable. Along with many of the other mesh tools, they don't work unless if you make an object editable, and you can do that with this button down here, or you can use the C hotkey. So I'll go ahead and click this, and we'll try that hotkey one more time, MU, and you can see everything is working nicely as it should. We have various options here. We have this, where we can set the mode for all our axes, X, Y, and Z, or we can adjust these independently. So let's go through what these different modes are. We have leave. If you have this set at leave, it'll leave that specific set of points as they are, and it won't move it. If you set your mode to set, that will set the point at that exact place in the coordinate system. If you choose center, it will center that point. If you choose quantize, that's aligning it with the grid. That's what will happen with that point, is it'll snap it to the grid. Crumple are the most fun tools, I think, for the set point value. Crumple normal will, and I'll show this, crumple normal will make it look like this plane is crumpling and it's moving those points relative to their normal direction. And we went over normals in previous episodes, but if you weren't there for that, you can find the normal direction actually. Under our options, you can see your polygon normals here. So that's our polygon normals. And then we also have vertex normals. And the vertex normals are white, the polygon normals are black. So you can see those there. And that direction is your normal direction. And the normal direction is used for calculating shading. It's used for calculating dynamics. It helps Cinema 4D know what's the inside of your mesh and what's the outside of your mesh. It's useful for a lot of different things. It's used for calculating many of the 3D modeling commands in here, including set point value, because you can use that in order to decide how you're moving these points. Axial will move the point relative to the axis. Crumple will move or displace the point relative to the radius around the point. So you're basically setting a range for adjusting these points with these settings here. And if this sounds confusing right now, that's okay, because we're going to also show this. And I think sometimes it's easier to fully grasp something when you see it, especially if you're a visual learner, than when you just hear someone talking. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to choose crumple in the normal direction. And we're just going to adjust these here. I like to hit apply first, so that as we adjust these, you can see them adjusting in real time. So you can see this really is crumpling it. That's what it looks like. And it's crumpling it in the normal direction. And this is what's happening. But let's say instead of using the normals, we wanted to try axial. You can go ahead and click this and you can see what this looks like. So this is axial. You can adjust these in all the directions. I'm going to set the X to 0 for right now. Now notice that when we increase this, we are moving these points in the X axis according to the coordinate system that is defined down here. So we have object mode. Right now, our object's axis is the same as our world axis. So our world axis, I'll just roughly go over this really quick. I'm going to hit undo for a moment here and click away so we could talk about this. Our plane right here, if we go into model mode, you can see has an axis. This is its axis. And red is for X, Z is blue, Y is green. So there you go there. If I were to go ahead and move this, you can see that we have this object here, and its axis is now pointing a different direction. But the world axis is staying right here in the center, and you can see it has an origin that shows us the world axis, the origin does, and you can see that this is green for Y, blue for Z, X is red. So it has these visual indicators so that you know the direction everything is going in 3D space. So that's just good to be aware of. And we were talking about the other options in here. There's also screen. So that means that you'd be adjusting the points using the coordinate system that is parallel to the camera. So there's an invisible camera that is looking at this viewport. We can actually show an example of this. If I click the camera button and come out of this view, you could see that this is actually the location of where we are looking through the viewport here. So it would be using the axis of the perspective of the camera in order to calculate moving those points. It would be parallel to the camera. So that's just something to be aware of. I'm going to delete this camera. It's just a visual indicator. There is an invisible camera in that location while we're looking through the viewport here. at the things in our screen. And now I'm just going to hit undo a few times so that we go back to having our plane where it originally was, and we're going to go through some more of these settings. So we have crumple axial, and you can see this adjusts the points in the X direction. I'm going to set this back to 0, and we can crumple the points along the axis in the Y direction, and that's what this looks like. We can do the same thing within the Z direction. So that gives you an idea of what these settings are really doing here. We could also go with radial, and that's just another way of setting this up here. You could go with any one of these. Quantize, again, pretty much snaps things to the grid. You'll notice this is pretty much snapping to the grid when you use the quantize. So you move it, but it snaps. Set is you can set the points to a specific value. And we've gone through all of these settings pretty much by this point. We've gone through the different coordinate systems. Real-time update will allow you to see the update in real time. And then in and out, maybe, let's go back into here. In and out, you can see better if we go into this view here. I'm going to hit apply. And if we were to look in our right view, and by the way, I go in and out of these views with the middle mouse button. You can click on a view to make it bigger, or middle click on a view to see all of your views once again. It's really helpful. But right here where it says in and out, it's allowing these points to be moved both in and out relative to that original surface. If I turn this off and watch the right quadrant when I turn this off, if I turn this off, you'll see that now it's only moving out and it's not moving in. So that's how it's calculating this as you choose these values in here. Just something good to keep in mind. And the seed is adjusting the randomization of this. So you can try different ones and see what look you like the best by just adjusting this value in here. It's called the seed. It's basically the randomization of it, and you can choose a number that you'd like. So if you're wondering what you could do with this tool, it could be helpful for randomizing how leaves are on the floor. Maybe you don't want them all going in the same direction, but I think it's useful to actually use this tool with the FFD, which we covered the FFD tool last week. But you could use it for randomizing pieces of paper on someone's desk, post-it notes, leaves on the floor. There's a lot of different things that you might want to randomize a little bit. So it's something to think about on here. And let's go ahead and actually try doing that. I'm going to hide this plane because we're going to add in a new plane right here. And this plane, we're going to add an FFD deformer. Here it is. FFD deformer, we'll place that within the hierarchy of the plane. And we went over all the settings for this tool before. I'm just going to increase, or actually decrease the amount of grid points in the Y. I'll increase them in the X. I'll increase them in the Z. I'll adjust our grid size a little bit. I'll make this a little bit smaller, make this a little bit wider. I just want this encompassing our entire plane, and you can see that we need to move this a little bit more. So now it really is encompassing this whole area. Now the cool thing about this tool is it also works with the FFD points. Maybe I'll try axial for right now, but you can see that's starting to move the points for this. I want to move them in the Y direction, so I'll really exaggerate this right here. I don't really feel like I need to crumple them in the Z or the X for this representation. So let's say you had a leaf textured on this, or a post-it note textured on this plane here, and you wanted to have all of them have a little bit of variation. You could adjust that in here, and you could change it pretty simply just by adjusting the seed here and by adjusting these values, how much it's deforming. So it's just a cool tool, and you can even do this for something like a spline. So if we just drop in a helix here. Now, similar to polygonal objects, something like the helix, that's a spline object, you'd need to make this editable in order to really be able to edit the points using this tool. So I'll go ahead and hit the C hotkey in order to make that editable. I've changed the colors on my spline so that they're easier for you to see. If mine look a little bit different than yours, that's why I adjusted the colors for the spline in the preferences. But now that we've done that, we can use our hotkey MU once again, and we can hit apply. And now this looks kind of like electricity, which is kind of cool. Maybe we want to adjust this in the Z, or this like here. Now, this is looking pretty sweet. What if I wanted to make this light up or render? Maybe what I'll do is, if you're working in Redshift, you can do this. You can probably do something similar in other renders too, but I'll add a Redshift object tag. So I right-clicked on my helix. I'm adding a Redshift object tag. Under here, I can change our mode from disabled to, let's make this cylinders. I'll hit, well, actually, let's go ahead and add a material to this. So I'm going to create a Redshift material just so that we can see this. I'm adding a standard Redshift material. I'll just name this light because we're going to make this glow. Now, let's find our emission here and bump this up. We can choose what color we want this to glow. I'll make this a nice blue color, and we'll add this over here. And now, you could see we have some cool electricity kind of effect in here. So, I mean, this tool is kind of fun and cool to mess around with. You can make some cool stuff. And I think we've covered most of the settings. Let me double check. We went over all of these. So that is our 3D modeling tool for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll stay tuned for the next one. I go over another 3D modeling tool each week, and yes, I plan on covering all of them within Cinema 4D here on Ambient 3D Animations. So I hope you'll join me for next time. And thank you so much for hanging out and 3D modeling with me.